Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to another power-packed session of the ETHRWorld International Transformation Talks. Transformation Talks is an exclusive live series where leaders from different industries and functions address some of the biggest challenges pertaining to the world of work. To all our audience joining us today, keep posting your reflections, views, and comments in the comments section. We will take all the questions at the end of this session. Amidst the many challenging conversations and decisions that revolve around the future of work, leaders today are still struggling to adopt the right strategies to unleash the true potential of a striving workforce and to strike the right balance between speed, wellness, and agility. They need to foster an agile mindset, but also cultivate a healthy work environment. Performance sustainability is a critical concern for leaders today, and to stem the tide of a potential talent exodus, organizations need to carefully remodel the long-standing performance evaluation tools and strategies to boost employee morale and productivity in this new world of operations. But what are the barriers to sustaining good performance? What's the leader's take on goal setting, and what kind of culture can accelerate good performance in a world that is continuously evolving as we speak? To discuss the simple science behind performance management, today we have with us Marc Effron, a renowned author and president of the Talent Strategy Group. As a noted author and also president of the Talent Strategy Group, Marc helps the world's largest and most successful companies improve the quality and depth of their talent. Marc co-authored the Harvard Business Review publishing best-selling book, One Page Talent Management, which is often called the Talent Management Bible. Companies worldwide apply their discipline of science-based simplicity, accountability, and transparency. Marc's recent book from Harvard Business, 8 Steps to High Performance, has also gained the likes of many global HR leaders and professionals globally. Prior to forming the Talent Strategy Group, Marc served as the VP of Talent Management for Avon Products and led global leadership consulting practice for Aon Hewitt. He was also SVP Leadership Development for Bank of America and a congressional staff assistant. Welcome, Marc. Thank you so much for joining us. It is a pleasure to have you with us.
It's my pleasure, Yasmin. I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And I look forward to learning a lot from you, Marc, today. So without any further ado, let me start with my first question that I have for you. In a world that continues to evolve, performance sustainability is a major concern for leaders, Marc. In your experience, what actually is the science behind performance management, and which strategies have stood out in recent years, especially in the hybrid work model that we are working in?
The great news, Yasmin, is that there is incredibly strong science in the performance management area that in many cases tells us almost exactly what to do. The challenge is not every company is following that great science. If they do nothing else in companies, I would suggest they focus on two things that are absolutely proven to drive higher performance. One is setting great goals. As simple as that sounds, we've all heard that many times in our life. The science around goal setting is amazingly clear. It says that goals motivate effort, they focus our energy. The bigger the goal, the more motivated we are to try to achieve it. So the science is really powerful. The challenge comes in a lot of companies where either the goal setting process just isn't done very well, or goal setting is a list of 30 things I have to do, not what are the 3 or 4 most important things I have to do. Or goals are, here are 3 things I want to work on, as opposed to things that actually are going to help the organization to succeed. So the great news is that there is very clear science that can tell organizations what to do. Goal setting is one, coaching is another. Again, we have heard this 100 times. Coaching and feedback increases performance for all the obvious reasons. You have a goal, you might go a little bit left. Coaching brings you back to the center. And so those fundamental actions, goal setting and coaching, extremely powerful, just not done with as much discipline or rigor as they should be at a lot of organizations. Especially in the hybrid environment, those things still apply. So maybe if you're my boss, Yasmin, we don't have in-person meetings anymore, but you still need to coach me, then let's put in place that discipline. It's a once a week call or a once every 2 week call. How do I replace what we used to do talking in the office with something that's remote? So the science still applies in the hybrid world. The challenge is how do we make sure we're still taking the steps that matter most?
Exactly, Mark. And actually, that's my follow-up question. Why do you think companies fail, or why do you think they face this challenge of not being able to do this goal setting process right, or not being able to provide the right coaching? What is it that is stopping them?
I think there are probably, let's go with three things. I think if the CEO doesn't believe it's important, then the rest of us are not going to believe it's important. So let's start there. If the big boss doesn't say this matters, then no one else is going to care. Second, sometimes in my profession, HR makes things too complicated. And so if HR comes to me with a process that takes an hour, I'm going to roll my eyes and decide not to do it. So we in HR need to radically simplify a lot of these practices that the average busy manager can actually get them done. And probably the largest missing ingredient in most of my clients around the world, and again, my clients are all big, sophisticated companies, they should be doing this better, accountability. So if I'm not truly accountable, and when I say accountability, I mean consequential accountability. Good things happen to me if I do it, not as good things happen to me if I don't do it. And for a lot of the fundamentals of performance management, great goal setting, great coaching, transparent review conversations, there's no consequential accountability that leaders have. So we end up having to rely on their good intentions, which we hope they have to do these things. But even just a little bit of accountability, turning that dial up just a little bit, can help leaders to understand we are paying attention to if you're doing a good job at this, because it really matters for higher performance.
Exactly. I think the way you put it is so simple. I just hope if leaders could understand how simple it is to have the right performance management process in place. It's just goal setting, it's coaching, and as you said, accountability at the end of it. I think it's going to work wonders for them. It's just about understanding that it is indeed simple and not as complicated as we think.
And you need to then buy into that goal setting matters. I'm not going to spend any time on goal setting if you don't genuinely believe that doing that well is going to elevate performance. So half of what I do with my clients is simply convince them this really matters. You will have better performance, meaning more money in the bank at the end of the year if you do this well. But then the other piece, exactly what you said, let's make it unbelievably easy for them to do.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Mark, for sharing that. So, Mark, what are the barriers to sustaining good performance in an organization, according to you?
I would start with accountability. At the end of the day, if the CEO says, get it done, and there's a consequence for doing it or not doing it, people will figure out that middle portion. Well, how do I get it done? So let's start with very clear accountability. I will be thought of as a better leader, and better things will happen to me if I do these things, and the converse for if I don't do them. So let's make sure there is very clear accountability. People understand the few things that matter most. So the balance of accountability is I can't hold you accountable to do 20 things, but I can hold you accountable to do 3 things. I can hold you accountable for great goal setting. I can hold you accountable for having transparent coaching conversations, and I can hold you accountable for maybe building good quality successors. So I can hold you accountable for a few things if I make them simple and easy, and I convince you it actually really matters. So I would start there.
Great. I think that really makes a lot of sense, because if you start with accountability, there is responsibility, and that's how people will take the right steps towards creating the right performance management strategies. So thanks for sharing that. Yes. So in your book, 8 Steps to High Performance, you talk about achieving the desired performance by quickly developing the most important capabilities. So, Mark, what according to you is the secret to building a continuous learning environment? And what are the top 3 skills that every employee must have in this rapidly changing business landscape today?
Sure. I would suggest that just as sometimes we make goal setting and coaching too complex, we oftentimes think about development planning in too complex of a way. It feels like too involved of a process. So again, managers, maybe they have good intentions, but they just never get it done. Let's radically simplify this concept. This is a technique I teach around the world. It sounds very basic, but it's incredibly powerful. Let's start by defining your development journey. And I'll give you an analogy. If I live in the northeast part of the United States, in a state called Maine. And sometimes I work in Los Angeles. If I wanted to drive, I wouldn't drive that, but if I wanted to drive that and I typed into Google Maps, that my origin is the Northeast United States and my destination is the Western United States, would I get to Los Angeles? Probably not. If I typed in, I want to go from the state of Maine to the state of California, would I get to Los Angeles? If I'm lucky, but probably not. But if I put in my address, 52 Shipwreck Cove Road in Maine, and I put in the address I'm going to in LA, Google Maps would show me this is the shortest route. We need to take that exact same mindset with our employees. Be very clear about the origin. I see you being here today. I would like to see you being here going forward. We call it a from-to statement, and it might be, Mark, you need to move from being a great individual contributor who relies on your technical skills to succeed to being a team leader who can create a vision and pull others along to it. Sure. So very clear, what's the origin, what's the destination? Most leaders have never had that conversation with their team members. What they do instead is they say, take this class, read that book, go on that project. To complete what journey? If we haven't specified the journey, why am I doing all these things? Step one, that from to, and I write about that in the 8 steps. And then we know that the experiences that we have at work are the best accelerators of development. So the more high quality experiences we have, the more diversity of experience we have, the more adverse some of those experiences are, that will speed up our development. And so when we talk about having a continuous learning environment, let's be very clear about the from to. Let's make sure that people are focusing on building through experiences. Education is wonderful. We teach education, I love it, but the science is very clear. 70% of how we grow is through the experiences that we have. And that might be a job, it might be a project, it might be helping people out doing things, but it's kind of sleeves rolled up on actually doing something, not just sitting in the classroom. So from to, and then what's the experience that's going to close that gap? And go back to the point we just discussed, and accountability around that. Hold leaders accountable for at least those 2 basic conversations. Yasmin, I see you here. I'd like to see you going here. The one next experience I think that can get you there most quickly is X.
That's very interesting, Mark. I haven't heard this kind of an analogy before. I think if leaders, learning leaders especially, they get caught up in the entire creating the entire learning journey, and they forget that what's most important is the simple step of the origin and the destination, as you rightly said. I think if that is sorted, I think the rest of the steps follow through after that. So, and as you said, experience. How are you learning while doing? How are you learning in the flow of work? How are you learning on a daily basis? I think creating those kind of experiences will be very, very important. But the best part, I think, is about first deciding the origin and the destination, the from and to, as you very rightly said. That automatically builds a very great learning environment in an organization. So thanks for making it so simple, Mark. Thanks for sharing it. Sure. Also, Mark, now we come to technology now. A lot is being talked about. We are living in a hybrid work, and the increasing role of technology in this world cannot be emphasized enough. And the world is constantly changing at an incredible pace at the helm of a growing digital infrastructure. So how do you think an organization can leverage technology to elevate hybrid performance?
Now, I'm going to sound like a very old guy here. I'm not sure we need new technology to do the basics that we've just talked about. So we talked about goal setting, we talked about coaching, we talked about simple development. It might help to have technology to record those things, to store that information. But the challenge I find in most companies isn't that they don't have the best technology, because a lot of my clients have wonderful technology. It's that they aren't executing on the basic steps. The largest unprompted complaint I hear from my clients is about the quality of their HR technology. People love to complain about their HR technology. So I'm not sure that's needed. I think the first step is let's focus on the basics, but especially in the hybrid environment, let's make sure we're using collaboration tools, Mural and things like that to allow easier online work. So I do think if we're shifting some work to online, let's do our best to replicate the feeling and the tools that we have if I'm in a room with a whiteboard or a flip chart. So I do think tools like that help enable collaboration, incredibly important. But But I would suggest that the problem of high performance is not going to be solved by great technology. It's going to be solved by doing the basics of what actually drives high performance.
I think that's a great thought, Mark. I think technology can be a great enabler here. It could be an enabler for you. But if you do not have the basics correct, you will never, technology will not be able to help you in any way. So great point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think a lot of organizations invest a lot in technology. They implement it, but at times adoption also becomes a challenge for them after that. So figuring that out is also something that leaders should look at first.
Yeah, it's too often it's a shiny object. It's like, that does that. That's cool. Let's buy it. It's like, how do we use it? I don't know. What should we do with it? Well, I don't know, but it's cool.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Great. Great. Thanks, Mark. Coming back to goal setting, we started our conversation by talking about how important it is to set goals. So while there have been a lot of lessons around goal setting over the years, what, in your opinion, makes goals distinctive in the now of work? And what are some steps that people can take when they're setting these professional goals?
Yeah, I think clarity is unbelievably important, especially now in a hybrid work environment where it feels like more things are going on than ever. Being really clear that there are probably only 3 or 4 big deliverables that you have during the year. This is where I do a lot of work with executives on taking that list of 30 and saying, what are you really trying to achieve here? Because we're all busy. We all have 100 things to do, understood. But why are you doing those 100 things? What's the output that you're trying to produce? And so I think one key step, especially in the current work environment, is give people clarity and comfort by saying there are 3 or 4 big deliverables that you have. Let's define the outcome you're trying to produce. I know you're going to be very busy doing all those things, but I'll just clarify the goal is there. That's all I care about at the end of the year. Did you get that done? Did you not get that done? I know you'll be very busy getting these things done, but providing clarity, I think, is especially important these days, and ensuring that there is a very good link between what you're doing and what the organization values most. So are your goals really linked to the things that the organization says, I am going to be, I'm going to think better about Mark if he gets these things done because they're going to have a meaningful impact on what we do. So that oftentimes means a lot of good conversations with your boss to say, what matters most to you? What do you want to see me doing? In too many organizations, goal setting starts with, here are the 3 or 4 things I want to do, which is interesting, but maybe not where we should be focusing our time. So if Yasmin's my boss, the first conversation should be, Yasmin, what are you trying to achieve? And how can I help you get that done?
That's an interesting thought, because even I have noticed in my experience that individuals set their goals first, and after that they reach out to the manager to see if it's fine. I think, as you said, it should be the other way around, where you ask your manager what is expected out of you. So that's a very interesting point. Mark, I also had another question related to this. A lot of times I've seen organizations, managers, or even employees get confused between tasks and goals. Now, I think that is where the whole issue arises, when there are 30 tasks to be done, but the goals could be 2. How do you do that? How can we figure that out?
I would start by identifying the metric that you're trying to achieve, because normally goals and activities are still all flowing to, I have a metric. It's maybe I have a project due on a certain date. That could be a metric. Maybe I need to sell 100 of these things. That could be a metric. Let's start with that metric and then work backwards from, okay, what are the few big things you need to do to get that metric done? So let's say that I'm selling medical devices. It might be, well, Mark, you need to sell 100 of these medical devices this year. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to make sure that I have my network clearly mapped out. I need to make sure I have great product knowledge. I need to make sure that I am presenting this product in a compelling way. Probably 3 things that are going to allow me to get that metric done. Now, there are likely 50 tasks underneath each of those, but am I clear about the metric? Because that will then allow me to work backwards and say, well, what are the few big things I likely need to do to get that metric done?
Yes. Oh, that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. And also another question I had is about in the hybrid mode of working, where half of your employees could be in a different location, could be working from anywhere, could be working from office. How do you create a unified performance management system, or how do you measure productivity in a unified manner? I think a lot of leaders are struggling with that question.
Yeah, I would combine some of our earlier thoughts, one about just the discipline of goal setting, the discipline of coaching, making it really easy, but especially in hybrid, being even more purposeful about it. So if you were my manager, maybe before we used to see each other at the coffee machine, or there were times for those little conversations. Oh, about that project, make sure you talk to Roger and he has a question. Those little things that don't happen when we're online. And so as managers, we need to be more purposeful and more disciplined to maybe check in more frequently. Not micromanaging. It's not, what are you doing and what's happening? But hey, just want to check in. How are things going? I talked to Shruti. She mentioned this. You might want to know that. Do your best to replicate those little conversations that oftentimes are the kind of the grease for the wheels in organizations. Because if we're always just doing conversations like this, it feels like, yeah, the facts are there, but there's no emotion there. There's no subtlety there. Those are things you get from those in-person interactions. So try to be just as disciplined to structure more smaller interactions. Don't make every call have to be a big call. Oh, it's about the project. It's about this. It's, hey, it's a 15-minute check-in. I wanted to check in with you a couple times a week, see what's going on, and do your best to replicate that in office environment, as challenging as it may be sometimes.
And that is a simple thing to do, actually, and it will solve it for the long run, in fact, because your people are in different places, they are in different mindsets. But if you could just connect with them on a regular basis, I think that's going to solve a lot of problems. So thanks for sharing that, Marc. Yeah. Also, Marc, the right behavior plays a critical role in elevating performance. How would you define performance-driving behavior, and what is your suggestion for our future-focused leaders?
I would suggest a few things. Let's start with self-awareness. All of us are, according to the science, all of us are a little bit delusional about our own performance and behaviors. We all either think we're a little bit better than we are, or sometimes think we're a little bit worse than we are. But most of us are not accurate. And so step one is be self-aware, because if you're not self-aware, who knows what behaviors you should be working on. And the challenge of self-awareness is we have to be a little bit vulnerable. We have to admit there might be something I could be better at. And the only way I can find out what I need to be better at is to ask other people, what should I be focusing on doing differently? What's one thing you would like to see me do differently as a leader this year? What's one thing you'd like to see me do differently as a peer this year? Those feel like they're difficult questions to ask. But I guarantee you, if I've known you for half an hour now, Yasmin, but if I went to you at the end of this call and said, Yasmin, I would like to be a better guest on podcast. Do you have one suggestion for me? And I'm going to guess you have at least one. There's something I could do more of differently. Most people are happy to help out. It's our egos that get in the way. If I show up saying I'm the best podcast guest ever, well, then I'm never going to ask for any feedback. If we go into any conversation humble and saying, I'm sure there's something I could do, why don't I ask someone? That's step one. And that's the most challenging step, as we all know, because we all have an ego. We all like to think we're good at what we do. We don't necessarily want to hear the answer to what could I do more of or less of. Yeah. But it's almost always going to be productive. So I would start with self-awareness as the key step. But then I would also, when you're thinking about success at work, separate what I would call good citizen behaviors from performance-driving behaviors. So good citizen behaviors, work hard, honest, ethical, gets along with others, things that make you someone that others want to work with. That's great. But your boss probably cares about some other behaviors. What are the behaviors that your boss wants to see from you that she or he thinks is going to drive higher performance? The best way to find that out is ask your boss. What are the few things that matter most around here? Because sometimes we get hung up on what I'll call those good citizen or value-based behaviors. But what your boss really cares about is, are you doing things that help to drive higher performance? That's going to be different in every company. So I can't tell you the three things that matter most for everyone. But the best way to find out is have a conversation with your boss and say, I want to make sure that my behaviors are perfectly aligned with what you think are going to make me a high performer. Do you have some suggestions for me?
Great. And I hope the boss has the right suggestions and the right behaviors in mind. I think that's another challenge there.
That's a key variable, yes.
It is. But thanks for sharing, Marc. I think it's very beautifully said that if you could, set ourselves and divide our our behaviors into good citizen behaviors and performance driving behaviors. The whole combination of these two would, actually motivate people, empower people to perform better at work. And if you're more self-aware, vulnerable, and humble, as you said, if you can ask for feedback, ask for what makes you better, that will automatically impact your behavior in the end and your performance also. So great points. Thanks so much for sharing that. Mark, we're now moving on to a quick rapid fire questions that I quickly ask you before we wrap up the conversation. So according to you, Mark, what are the key attributes of high performance? How do high performers focus on or do things differently?
I would suggest the short answer is high performers have what I call a high performers mindset. Three quick things there. One is high performers recognize they're going to need to work harder than other people. That might seem obvious, but there's been a lot of discussion recently. Well, hours don't matter. Well, sometimes hours do matter. So high performers recognize they're going to need to put in more hours. They're going to need to sacrifice more. They might not see their family as much as they want to. They might miss their favorite cricket game, the original time it's shown. They're going to miss out on some things they would rather do because they're going to dedicate time to work. And high performers recognize the world of high performance is always relative. If I did 120% of my goals for this year, but Yasmin did 140% of her goals for the year, I might think I'm a good performer, but I'm not the highest performer because somebody beat me. So high performers have that high performers mindset. I'm going to put in more time. I'm going to sacrifice for the benefit of work. And I recognize there's always someone trying to do better than I am. And I'm going to be evaluated against their standard, not mine.
Just a follow-up question on that. Is that going to cause too much pressure on high performers? How do they manage it then?
Yeah, high performers love pressure. High performers oftentimes take pressure as a challenge. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not scared, that they don't doubt themselves sometimes. High performers, in fact, sometimes are some of the most psychological term messed up people out there. But they tend to love that challenge. And part of it is personality based. I know it's the short answer section, so I'll give you a short answer. There's a part of our personality called conscientiousness. And that is the type of person who wakes up every single morning and just says, let's get more done today. What can I do first? And so that type of personality tends to be in high performers, and they're just kind of naturally driven to do more.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. Next question for you is, what is the key to building and retaining great talent?
I think in most organizations, what they need to do is have more discipline. We call it a talent production line. Treat growing talent or producing talent the same way you treat producing any other product or service you really care about. Be really clear about what you're trying to grow. Do you know what a great leader is? Be very disciplined about the development process. We've talked a bit about that. Make sure that that's regular, structured. Somebody's kind of looking at what's happening to individuals, monitoring them. And the key part that we haven't talked about yet is make sure you're getting the best people into the best jobs. If you're working hard to develop people, to grow them, to get the right behaviors, the right performance, are you getting them into the jobs where they're going to have the highest and best use in the company? Or are managers holding on to them too long? Does that talent not understand why they should move? So make sure there's what we call a talent production line, a very disciplined approach to producing high quality talent.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Mark. And my final question to you is, what would your suggestion be for young professionals who are just starting their careers? What is it that they should pay most attention to?
Yeah, I would say a few things. Let's start with hard work generally pays off. As simple as that sounds, hard work generally pays off. It might not make you a billionaire, but you'll probably be more successful than others. Become really good at something. So functional experience, functional depth, incredibly important. If you want to be a reporter, be the best reporter you possibly can be. Really become deep in the art and the skill of being a great reporter. Build your network. The science is clear. People with bigger networks are more successful because they have more people who want to help them out. They have more people they can reach out to. And finally, make sure that you're not just getting that deep experience, but you're getting a variety of experience. So, in the journalism field, let's say you're a science journalist. Well, great. Try being a business journalist as well. Understand what that looks like. Try being a beat reporter for Mumbai, for Pune, or for a city. Get that different experience so that You're not just very narrow. People see you as someone they could drop into a variety of different scenarios, and you're always going to succeed.
That's so interesting, Mark. Thank you so much. On that note, I'd like to thank you for giving us time for this live session series. It was really nice talking to you and learning so much from you. At the end of it, what I understand and what resonates the most with me is that performance management can be a very simple process if you look at it like that. You just have to have the right discipline. You have to make it authentic, have the right goal setting process, and have accountability attached to it. That will set the tone for you as a leader, as a performance management organization. And that's how you will cultivate more better talent, you will retain better talent, and create high performers within the organization and motivate them to do better. So any closing words from you, Mark, before we wrap up?
Well, first, perfect summary. You can write the next book on high performance, because that's exactly it. So I would just reinforce, keep it simple. Driving high performance does not need to be difficult, and clear accountability. Make sure that your leaders know this matters. We're going to think of you more positively if you do this better.
Exactly. Absolutely, Mark. So on that note, that was all the time we had for this session. Thank you once again, Mark. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you, Yasmin. My pleasure.
Thank you. And to all our audience watching us, it was a great pleasure hosting you as well. Please stay tuned for the update on the next episode of Transformation Talks. See you all super soon. And thank you for joining us.